I feel at a bit of a disadvantage following those wonderful youth, but I hope you'll allow time for people at the other end of the spectrum, because it's so wonderful to be here tonight, and just sad that I can't see everybody, as I've attended many Tiffin meetings. But thank you very much to everyone for joining tonight, and to Tiffin for giving us this opportunity, and particularly Eugenie and Jenny for helping support us in doing so. So I want to tell you about the plans of Accord, which is a grassroots organisation which I'm involved with. It belongs to and works for the indigenous people who are very little known in India, the Adivasi of a valley in the Nilgiri Hills, which is at the end of the Western Ghats in South India. These people are called by the government of India particularly vulnerable tribal groups, which means the most vulnerable section among tribals who inhabit isolated, remote and difficult areas in small and scattered hamlets. Like First People everywhere, the Adivasi suffer perpetual discrimination and the loss of their land. They can no longer live as they did for millennia, as just-in-time forest-dwelling hunter-gatherers in a cashless, interconnected, cooperative community in harmony with nature and wasting none of her bounty. They go to school, but their compulsory education does not accommodate or respect their cultural identity. Unless they move to the cities where they cannot thrive, the only work for most is day laboring, where they are almost always exploited. For nearly 7,000 young people in this community, the future is bleak, with poverty prevalent and many suffering from depression and resorting to alcoholism, even suicide. The situation is made far worse by COVID. The Adivasi are last to be employed, they have no savings, and as sufferers of sickle cell disorders, they are clinically extremely vulnerable. Ramesh, a 20-year-old Adivasi young man, has had a fairly typical experience. His village is some way into the forest from the main road, so it was quite a task getting to the tribal school in town when he was 6 years old. Teaching, he discovered, was in Tamil, which he did not know, and not his tribal language. He never caught up with what he was supposed to have learned, and finding it increasingly difficult and pointless, dropped out after Standard 8. His casual employment in the tea plantations and construction jobs was occasional and poorly paid, sometimes in alcohol, not even in cash. Accord has supported the Adivasi over many years to sell the honey they gather and the coffee they grow on their small holdings, as well as non-timber forest products of spices, herbs and plants. The need now is to make that support more strategic, long-term, engaged and focused on young people. Working with the community, Accord is setting up an Adivasi Innovation Hub to help Adivasi youth start their own community-owned micro-enterprises and to give them essential planning, training and operational mentoring and support. The first enterprises have been agreed by the community, drawing on experience and research, and the requirement for a light environmental footprint in keeping with their tribal traditions. They will be the sale of agricultural and non-timber forest products, and to begin with, construction, solar power, and communications enterprises, with clients and customers in their own villages, Accord itself, and in its sister health and medical organizations. The education organizations. The Incubation Hub calls for skills which are not available in this community or locally. And so it's to employ a professional to lead this initiative and deliver tailored business support appropriate to their culture and circumstances that I'm appealing tonight. We mustn't let them down by not giving them the best. As a first step, this intervention aims for the youth who work in these enterprises to be able to meet their financial needs, so they don't have to rely on low-paid employment outside their community, and to gain self-confidence and not be at a perpetual disadvantage in their interactions with non-tribals. They will learn new skills act as role models for other young people, and from them will emerge some community leaders for the future. The enterprises will themselves tackle and deliver profit over time to address various social problems and will create community assets. Over the first 5 years, the Hub aims to establish around 15 micro-enterprises, benefiting through full-time employment 750 Adivasi youth and their 150 households. The longer-term vision is Adivasi villages and households which are economically self-reliant and environmentally sustainable, with enhanced community well-being, self-confidence and cohesion. Impact will be constantly monitored using strategic and operational metrics, including feedback and surveys with the community, indicators, for example, of the number of girls and women involved, through the engagement of Hub and Accord staff and their animators, who are the tribal field staff. Ramesh, whom I mentioned, heard from his village Accord animator about the training on offer with the Selco Foundation as a solar lighting engineer. He and some friends signed on, and now he knows how to install solar home systems in the villages. His life and prospects, and with them those of his family, also his village, have been transformed. But there is still some way to go before his group can run their enterprise for the long term on their own, find the clients and manage the finances. The Hub will hold their hands, guide and mentor them until they can become truly self-reliant. These Adivasi First people are not only suffering from poverty, their very survival is at risk, especially so in COVID times. Will you give Ramesh and young Adivasis like him the hope of a future and contribute to the £20,000 first year cost of employing an experienced, sympathetic professional to set up the Adivasi Innovation Hub in order to launch successful tribal-owned micro-enterprises from which their entire community will benefit and thrive? Thank you very much.